We're here today because I-35 is at a crossroads. It's clearly aging and needs to be replaced. But replaced with what? If we're going to stop global warming, we have to stop the expansion of highways and the terrible emissions coming from the transportation sector. TxDOT is going the wrong way on I-35.
We have a tremendous opportunity in front of us. Removing I-35's upper decks and lowering the highway between Airport Avenue and Cesar Chavez offers the opportunity for transformational change here in the heart of Austin. It's a transformative opportunity to create literal bridges over a road that is a physical manifestation of the systemic racism that governed earlier city planning efforts. If we achieve what many in the community have strived for over these years, decades really, of charrettes and analyses, this will be a legacy of healing, of ingenuity, of engineering. It's an important project, and it needs to be done well. We need to make sure that TxDOT and the City of Austin work together to make sure that these local businesses don't disappear along with the local jobs that depend on their success.
I'm proud to be here alongside my colleagues, so many neighbors and local organizations to stand up for change here on I-35, and I represent the northern section of what's being proposed by TxDOT. And I want to be clear. I oppose TxDOT's latest I-35 widening plan because it's wrong for our environment, it's wrong for our economy, it's wrong for our safety, and it won't even fix traffic. What we're advocating for is something so much better. We can create space for people to live and play in. We can support transit. We can protect our environment, and we can reconnect our neighborhoods. We can get people in Austin around safer from north to south and from east to west without relying on an outdated 1970s model that really only benefits the big construction contractors and people building more and more housing way out on the edges of our city. We can do much better than that. No higher, no wider, but much better. This isn't just a cut-through scar through our city. This is the heart of our city, and we should do right by it. So I ask the community to join together to oppose this latest plan from TxDOT, say no wider and no higher, but that we can do so much better.
I'm looking out at this thing here, and it means a lot to a lot of us, and more to some of us than others. This stretch of highway right here, this is the deadliest roadway we have in Austin. It is the physical manifestation of a segregationist past and segregationist policies. It's the poster child of car-choked mobility systems. It pumps countless tons of carbon and pollutants every single year into the air we breathe. And right now, TxDOT thinks the best way to build I-35 is to build more I-35. On the same day the department showed us its latest proposals for this highway, the United Nations issued a blockbuster report. It warned us that time is quickly running out to take the kind of meaningful action that will prevent the worst case scenarios of climate change. These outcomes are going to get worse, and their impacts are going to fall disproportionately harder on Black and brown and lower income families and communities. Those are the same communities that have historically been hurt by big urban highway investments. When you add more space for cars, more cars will always fill up that space. Something needs to be done about I-35, but the final plan needs to be no wider and no higher than what we have right now. It needs to reflect our community's values when it comes to mobility, safety, carbon emissions, and reconnecting our very fragile and fractured communities.
We obviously need better mobility options. That's why you saw Project Connect pass with flying colors. You saw Prop B pass with flying colors. That's because our community stood together and said, we are tired of sitting in traffic. It's not good for the environment. It's certainly not good for the businesses, homes, and schools that are near I-35. We have Vision Zero in the city of Austin. TxDOT itself has #EndTheStreak. It's in all of their emails. If you've ever spoken with folks from TxDOT via email, you will see #EndTheStreak. I don't think the plan that's been presented to us, the two alternatives that they have identified, are going to accomplish that task. Our community is asking for clean air. They want to walk, bike, stroll, and roll their way through town in green spaces with trees. What we don't need is end-to-end concrete. What we don't need is to spend our lives sitting in traffic.
No wider, no higher. That's all you need to know. That was a promise made. Make them stick to it.
For a decade, Reconnect Austin's been calling for a narrow footprint, better east-west connectivity, and restoring the city at the surface. This project does not do that. We continue to ask for Reconnect to be included in the environmental review. Let's bring housing and jobs back to Austin instead of bulldozing existing local businesses and homes.
Ramming I-35 through Austin, through the heart of Austin, was a mistake. Now, TxDOT proposes to double down on that mistake and widen I-35. That is absurd. Widening highways doesn't work. It just encourages more driving. No city needs an interstate highway running through its downtown, and we don't either. We can let TxDOT keep making the same mistakes, or we can create a spectacular boulevard, a place that's uniquely Austin. Austin City Council, thank you for being here. When you stand up to TxDOT and fight for this, we will stand with you.
We have an obligation in this city to make sure the folks who live here now, who didn't create this barrier, will have the opportunity to find a city that respects its people, its legacy, its treatment, its division, where all of our children, because we won't be here, can live in peace, with respect, and create a city that will address racial inequality, racial discrimination. Let's also add the idea of civil rights to make sure that black and brown people, and poor people also, are still in peace. So if you're going to design this obstacle here, this behemoth here, make sure it reinforces those ideas of a new city comprised of a racial democratic idea where all of us can respect each other, live in peace, not have to embrace another legacy of racism, white supremacy, and discrimination. Thank you very much.
All we're kind of asking for in that is more creativity from TxDOT to come back to these designs that go through the middle of our city. It takes a little bit more effort, it's worth it, and we're willing to be there with that work. Our concerns for Cherrywood fall into three kind of major areas: accessibility to the frontage road and across the interstate, along the interstate. We want safety for all modes of travel. And the third area is the social impacts of this freeway. We stand aligned with those broader equity social impacts that this project represents.
TxDOT does not need to take away our special places without even talking to us. We want the neighborhood to have a voice. And I have some words from Ora Houston. Real justice, creativity, and innovation require solutions to transit problems which don't begin and end with more of East Austin erased. The answer to congestion is not additional lanes through the center of Austin.
If TxDOT proceeds with the proposed highway expansion along this corridor, Escuelita del Alma Child Care Center will be forced to close its doors after 21 years of caring for and educating young children. And as a result, 200 families will lose their trusted child care center. As a city, we cannot afford to lose more schools dedicated to the education and care of young children. This would be the second time our school and community will be forced to move due to unsustainably rapid growth and development over legacy philosophy. We represent just one of many businesses and neighborhoods that will be negatively impacted by this change.
Let's get progressive and forward-thinking with our solution to this problem. We do not want an outdated, ineffective resolution. We are in this mess because of poor planning. If you kick out the residents and small businesses, you tear down the buildings in their homes, you pave more lanes, you get more traffic. Plain and simple. It's ugly, it harms our environment and the people that choose to live here, and it's a poor use of some of our most valuable property. It really breaks my heart to think that Escuelita de Alma could be displaced yet again. There are over 200 families with children here. This is a real existential threat to a small business owned by a woman of color.
Crashes are a much bigger problem than congestion across the strait and right here on this freeway. We demand TxDOT figure out how to spend $5 billion fixing this broken freeway without assuming that families will have to keep paying for the failings of our transportation system with their loved ones' lives and limbs. All proposals will not be finished until we figure out how to fix I-35 to not be the deadly mistake that stands before us.
In order to be the Austin that Austinites deserve, we must recognize this moment for what it truly is, an opportunity to acknowledge, prioritize, and evolve, an opportunity to create a better Austin. We must acknowledge the long-standing, disproportionate racial and economic impacts exacerbated by the original construction of I-35, which created permanent, state-funded infrastructure to support not only Jim Crow, but segregationist policies. We must prioritize the voices of the underrepresented, marginalized, and historically oppressed, and in doing so, prioritize their health and safety, no matter their unique vulnerability, whether it is the color of their skin or the lack of secure housing. This means the new I-35 project must be designed and built to improve safety, mobility, and access for all people, whether they are driving, walking, biking, taking transit, or just living their lives along I-35. And it must be no wider or higher than it currently is. We must evolve in our design with this project and design it with equity in mind and learn from previous mistakes in transportation so as to not erect new barriers separating parts of our town with disproportionate burdens placed upon low-income communities and communities of color. We must evolve in our transparency. We must ensure that there is a racial equity lens framework TxDOT will use to evaluate the alternatives for this project. And TxDOT should have a minimum of 180 days of public comment for all future comment periods. We must evolve by thinking about tomorrow today and push for any future created land to be locally owned and used for the maximum community benefit. And we must evolve by funding the future. Anti-displacement is part of the new standard. Thinking about anti-displacement is part of the new standard of due diligence when it comes to infrastructure and transportation, and there must be money allocated in its budget in order to succeed. And we're here to fight like hell to ensure that those that have historically been silenced are represented in every nook and cranny of this here project. Thank you.